Hello and welcome to What the Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Bidens. Let's get to it. It's Monday, March 1st, 2021. Welcome to Day 41. The House of Representatives passed Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief package in a 219 to 212 vote. The measure would provide $1,400 payments to millions of Americans, speed up vaccine distribution and testing, and extend unemployment aid through the summer. More than a dozen House Republicans skipped the vote, saying that they can't attend due to the ongoing public health emergency. Those members, however, were scheduled to speak at the Conservative Political Action Conference, or CPAC, in Orlando. The Senate will take up the measure this week, and the bill currently includes hiking the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. But the bill is unlikely to receive support from Senate Republicans. Federal jobless aid expires on March 14th. Senate Democrats and the White House have recently abandoned efforts to include a $15 minimum wage hike in order to move Biden's relief package forward before current supplemental unemployment benefits expire on the 14th. Senior Democratic lawmakers briefly considered new tax penalties on big companies that don't pay at least $15 an hour, but dropped the plan after it became clear that getting all 50 Senate Democrats to agree on the specifics would risk missing the deadline for extending unemployment benefits. The tax idea was floated after the Senate parliamentarian ruled that the increase in the federal minimum wage would violate the chamber's rules. A group of 23 progressive lawmakers urged Biden to keep his campaign promise to raise the minimum wage and to overrule the Senate parliamentarian and keep a $15 minimum wage in the $1.9 trillion stimulus package. The White House declined to overrule the parliamentarian, saying that's not an action we intend to take. Democratic Senators Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, meanwhile, have both said that they do not support increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour as part of the coronavirus relief package. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said the administration would work with members of Congress, with their staffs, about the best vehicle moving forward, but we don't have a clear answer on what that looks like at this point. Moving on, the FDA authorized Johnson & Johnson's one-shot coronavirus vaccine for emergency use. Johnson & Johnson's initial supply will be limited to 3.9 million doses, which are expected to ship this week, with about 800,000 going directly to pharmacies. An estimated 20 million doses are expected by the end of March and 100 million doses by the end of June. Meanwhile, the Biden administration's task force for reuniting migrant families separated by the Trump administration will allow those families to reunite and settle in either the United States or in their country of origin. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas called the separation of more than 5,500 migrant families under the Trump administration the most powerful and heartbreaking example of the cruelty that preceded this administration. Approximately 105 families have been reunited so far. Back in D.C., the Senate Judiciary Committee voted to advance Merrick Garlands' nomination for Attorney General. The vote was 15-7, with all Democratic senators and 4 Republicans in favor. Moving on, the Biden administration will not release the visitor logs of attendees to virtual meetings, which is the primary meeting form during the coronavirus pandemic. An official said virtual meetings will not be subject to release in the same way that previous administrations didn't release phone logs, but we're planning on regularly releasing the attendee list for in-person meetings at the White House. Before the inauguration, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said the White House would release its visitor logs, and that Biden wants to bring truth and transparency back to the White House. In 2017, 3 organizations sued Trump for not releasing his White House visitor logs, and the Secret Service agreed to stop erasing the visitor logs following Freedom of Information Act requests at the time. Moving on, Republicans, conservative activists, and media personalities have repeatedly pushed false and fictional narratives about what happened at the Capitol on January 6th in order to rewrite the story that a mob, incited by Trump, breached the United States Capitol to keep Trump in power through the use of violence. For nearly 2 months, a campaign by pro-Trump groups has tried to minimize the insurrection by advancing baseless claims that Antifa provocateurs were to blame for the violence on January 6th. Also, that a few troublemakers spoiled the protest, and that the riot wasn't that big of a deal. And at a Senate hearing last week, Senator Ron Johnson repeated the falsehood that fake Trump protesters fomented the violence. Democrats, meanwhile, have called for more investigations into the attacks, including what Trump's role was, and negotiations continue over creating an outside commission. And finally, Trump attacked Biden's tenure as president in his first public appearance since leaving office, calling it the most disastrous first month of any president in modern history. Trump started his 90-minute address, which began more than an hour late, by asking the crowd at CPAC, "Do you miss me?" before reviving his false claims of election fraud and attacking the Supreme Court for not siding with him, saying that the justices should be ashamed of themselves for what they've done to our country and that they didn't have the guts or the courage to do anything about it. Trump also said that he is not starting a new party, but did suggest that he may run again in 2024, saying, "Who knows, I may even decide to beat them for a third time." Trump also named every Republican who supported his second impeachment and called for them to be ousted. 95% of conference attendees said the GOP should continue to embrace Trump's policy ideas, and 68% of attendees said Trump should run again in 2024.
That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Anditas.